Hello, everybody. Scott Golden, Golden Opportunities Coaching here. Welcome to those of you who are new. Welcome back to those of you who are seasoned veterans of what we do around here. And what we do around here is we give as many tips and tricks to living a successful life as humanly possible. We also try to do that in a consistent basis, and we bring about resolution to people's challenges whenever possible. So, anyway, one of the things to consider is when to know it's time to end a relationship or you're incompatible with your partner. Incompatibility is a pain in the tail, especially if you've already developed emotions around your partner. We're going to go through about 7 or 8 of these things today. Signs of incompatibility, so you can start to look at your relationship a little bit differently and figure out how to strategize what the best move is with your primary romantic relationship currently if you have some indecision, easy for me to say, about whether to stay with this person or not. Sometimes it's important to realize and recognize that what you thought a person was and what they actually are is very different, and that is important to consider, especially before making a lifelong commitment like marriage or cohabitation or having children or other things of that nature. So, um, there are about, let's see, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things I want to go through here. Um, the first thing is understanding between partners. So the reality is, if you don't understand what motivates your partner, the relationship at the end of the day is relatively useless. If you can't make a relationship make sense to you and the motivating factors of your partner, it doesn't matter how they make you feel. It doesn't matter how much you enjoy their company. If you can't understand their motivating factors, sooner or later the relationship will fall apart, because if you don't understand what motivates them, you can't really understand how to connect with them continually and consistently. Now that creates problems for people because they think, oh, well, I'll grow into understanding a person. And yes, to some degree that is possible and very likely probable. The more time you spend with someone, the more you're going to understand them. However, if you don't understand their core motivations, in other words, what makes them be in a relationship at all, are they behaving in a manner that is more about social conformity or their own happiness? Are they more interested in their own happiness or the happiness of others or the community? These are core questions, and there's many of them to go through, but those are just some ideas of some core things a person has to understand in order to understand their partner and their relationship with the rest of the world. Secondly, is differences. So, along with the ideas of understanding each other and the motivation that causes a person to live well, uh, can we accept each other's differences in a respectful and progressive manner, or are we constantly trying to change each other? The lowest level of love that exists is the love that tries to control another person. And so there's this misnomer that says, I love you, therefore, if I love you right, you will change for me or I will change for you. And that is utter BS. It doesn't work hardly ever. Maybe 5 to 10% of the time does that work, and usually it only works short term, because at the end of the day, true love is acceptance of where a person is, where they're going, and what they're about. And so there are differences of political alignment, there's differences of religion, there's differences of the desire to have children or not, there's differences in how children are raised or not. There's differences in what motivates a person. Are you motivated by your search for security? Are you motivated by your need for love and connection? Are you motivated by your need to feel significant to your partner at all times? And if you're different from your partner on some of these core issues, are you willing to accept them where they are without trying to change them? Yes, you can have conversations that may cause them to shift their mindset or think differently about something, but at the end of the day, you have to accept a person where they are, because the changes that will happen, should they happen, have to come from within the person. If you're not willing to accept a person where they are, then really you've outgrown the relationship and there's no reason to stay. And unfortunately, what happens is people muddy relationships with the concept of words and promises, and they don't look at, are we really truly compatible, or are our differences too separate? For example, I know for me, I would never again date a person who didn't have at least a semi solid work history. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to have worked every day from 14 to you know, 55, but it does mean that they either had a plan or they were working towards something or they were going forward and they were always, with a goal in mind. I have dated on multiple occasions different individuals who had long gaps in their work history for various reasons. And at the time, I thought this was a good idea. Upon reflection over the past several years, I've realized I wouldn't do that again. That's a deal breaker for me. And so that difference of, you have a work history or you don't, or I would rather date someone that has at least an ambition towards self employment because I'm self employed. And so a person who goes into a job and they check in, from 8 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 7 to 2 or whatever, and they think the world ends at the end of the workday. They're not necessarily going to understand me unless they at least have some aspirations of, hey, under the right circumstances, I might like to try doing this business and I'm willing to dedicate myself to it. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't date a person who is different from me, at least to explore them, but it does mean that if those differences came forward, I would look at them and go, I wonder how compatible we really are if this is where I'm going, this is where you're going. Are we truly compatible? So working around differences is a major part of that. Another one is the desire to change another person. Look, if you feel the need to change somebody, or if you define how much they love you by how much they're willing to change for you, you're not in love with them, you're in love with what they could be. And I would say this is the biggest single problem in relationships, is if you're in love with what a person could be. He could be such a good partner if he stopped drinking. She could be such a good partner if she didn't have anxiety. He could be such a good partner if he wasn't such a flirt. She could be such a good partner if she had more of a work ethic. These type of things, it goes back to, well, if a fish had legs, they could ride a bicycle. In other words, the idea is something could happen, yes, and it would change everything. But if what we're going to get from a relationship simply is what is for the foreseeable future, and it would take something major to change a person from the inside outward, then it's time to leave. If your main goal is to change a person into what you believe your ideal version of a relationship is. Constant fighting is another one. Look, people will disagree. That happens. But learning to disagree appropriately and respectfully is an art form. It's an art form that I don't think enough couples um, learn early enough to save relationships. I think there's many relationships that could be saved if people knew how to fight respectively. Look, at the end of the day, you're going to disagree with your partner. You may disagree with your partner 30% of the time, 40% of the time. But if you know how to do it respectfully, which is, hey, I don't agree with you, I'm not going to agree with you, but I respect your right to your own opinion. I respect your freedom of choice. I respect that, we are different in this way. Are we different enough that we need to reconsider the relationship? Maybe. Okay, let's do that. If we're not that far gone down into a difference mentality, then it's like I'll let you be you, you let me be me, and we come together where we agree. The lasting relationships I've seen, and this is 100% of the time that I've seen relationships lasting over 10 years, where where qualifier, where both people are happy. It's where people can go, I can disagree with you and still love you. I can disagree with you and still like spending time with you. I can disagree with you and still find more value than loss in you as a person. And when that's not the case, when the fight to get someone to see things your way becomes the dominant way in which the two of you communicate, get out now because you're not compatible for the future. Easy for me to say. But anyway, so another one is the avoidance of conflict. So look, no one wants to fight with another person, right? Like, at the end of the day, we want to get along. We want to do go along to get along because life's short and nothing matters until you make it matter. And the things you make matter, you got to pick your battles. But at the same time, if you're constantly avoiding conflict, if you're giving in so much that in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, you're going to resent the person, it's time to leave. Because you can make a compromise or a concession if you really believe that it's for the betterment of the relationship. But if you're making a concession simply to avoid conflict, to avoid a fight, to avoid, a disagreement, then sooner or later you're going to look at the person in a different light. Now, it may not happen today, it may not happen this week, it may not even happen this month. But there will come a point when you look at reflectively all the sacrifices you made for a relationship and go, this was a really bad idea. We weren't really as compatible as I thought, and I lost a good bit of time to a relationship of incompatibility. And I can honestly say there are people in my own life that I really thought as friends and as partners I was compatible with. And I look back and I go, you know what? That was never the case. I was trying to force something forward that I thought was compatibility. And now, at this point in my life, my needs portfolio is so different, I wouldn't entertain that person or group of people again. You probably have the same thing in your own life where you look and you go, hey, had I known you believed this, and that, we probably wouldn't have gotten this far. Had I known that, we would have these conflicts, I probably would have cut this off in the beginning, but I didn't know it was coming. But at the same time, I got tired of over sacrificing and over giving just to keep the relationship going. Avoidance of conflict is one surefire way to create some challenges. So, isolation is another one. So, self isolation is the idea that um, we want to be introverted to an extreme extent. Isolation within the relationship, though, is when we count our partner as a person whom is a the person we spend the majority of our time with, and we don't want that to change. So there's nothing wrong, and it's healthy to have diverse relationships, from acquaintances to friendships to best friends and then to partners, and that is how human nature and humankind is built. I'm of, and this is a personal opinion, and I will put that as a disclaimer, I'm of the opinion that if you are in a relationship, then your partner should be able to know every one of your friends should they request to. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they need to. There's some friendships where it's completely comfortable. I don't need to know them. I know you like them. Good for you. Go have a good time. But if there's any objection to, especially in relationships where there's potential for flirtation, be they multi-gender relationships, male-female, or same-gender relationships, male-male, female-female, and there's some concern about the intention of a relationship, being able to, in a healthy relationship, pull the card of saying, hey, I want to know this person so I can understand what your relationship's like, and I need that to be comfortable going forward with you, is a completely valid thing. I've actually been in social groups where the saying is having a friend where attraction is possible, and not letting your partner meet that person and encouraging the fostering of a relationship, even if it's just a light acquaintanceship between all of you, can actually undo the foundation of many romantic relationships. And I tend, having seen that, to agree with that. Look, if I'm happy with my relationship, why do I need to have a relationship that my partner can't know about with a member of the opposite sex? Now, some people say, well, we've been friends for 20 years. Why wouldn't you want your friend of 20 years, or since, sixth grade or whatever it is, to know your partner? If your partner's an important part of your life, if your best friend or your good friend or your long-term friend is an important part of your life, eventually they should intersect with each other so that you can have a full life experience. If you're afraid to let them intersect, there's something about one of those relationships that's unbalanced or unhealthy. The last one is the changing of attraction over time. So obviously there's a lot of debate. Does physical attraction happen instantaneously? For some people it does. Does physical attraction develop over time? For some people it does. And does physical attraction fade and grow as time goes on? And the answer to that is emphatically yes. So when you meet a new person, you're going to most likely first be attracted to them physically, and then hopefully personality and like goals and all those other things take over. We are visual creatures. We notice people visually before we know anything else about them. And unfortunately, the biology and biochemistry of how attraction works, physical is a dominant thing in that process. I say unfortunately because I have seen people who have married or been committed to their exact opposite as partner, be it in size, be it in weight, be it in appearance, look, presentation, whatever have you, and it works wonderfully for them. I'm reminded of a friend of mine who is about 105 pounds. Her husband of almost a decade now is 560 some pounds. They are an odd couple by every stretch of the imagination, but she found true happiness with him because he had accepted himself. She had not accepted herself. He helped her along that journey, and they fell in love as a result. Is that rare? Yes. But does it happen? Yes. And I think if more people were more open to attraction coming in multiple ways, we'd have more lasting relationships rather than the relationship turmoil that we often experience, especially in Western culture. That being said, your level of attraction for your partner will change over time. When you have seen them at 3 in the morning when they wake up with bedhead, you're going to view them differently than on that first, second, or third date. When you've seen them cry and be miserable or become exceptionally angry, or you've seen all the emotions that exist within the cornucopia of who they are as a person, your level of physical attraction and emotional attraction to them by proxy will change. This is why I encourage people, you can date and date exclusively for as long as you like, but don't get serious about making someone permanent for at least a year in your life. If you don't give the development of a relationship at least 1 year to develop, sometimes more, the chances of issues of how you interpret different things, be it the holidays or anniversaries of a difficult day, or um, different seasons or seasons in one's own life, the chances the relationship will fail increase by 2/3 if you haven't given that foundation of a year's investment before making a true commitment. And so that's a really interesting dichotomy because a lot of people, this feels good and I don't want the feeling to end, and so they overcommit quickly in a month or two or six or whatever, and then they realize they wake up one day and they're like, hey, this person I thought was my ride or die is a lot different than I thought them to be, and attraction's part of that. How you see a person if they gained 50 pounds, how you see a person if they suddenly became an amputee, how you see a person if they change their hair color, hairstyle. I was reading a post the other day about I couldn't date someone. I love this girl, but if she got a tattoo, we're done. And I'm like, wait a minute. Your definition of your relationship is determined by a movable factor, and that's dangerous because sooner or later, both of your bodies will change. And if you're not ready to accept and embrace those changes from the beginning, there's definite foundational problems with the potential and growth of your relationship. So those are the things I wanted to touch on today. We will be back with more content, maybe later today, definitely tomorrow. But until next time, keep your feet on the ground, your mind in the moment. Until next time, everybody.